The Blackthorn Mysteries, Book 1, The Case of the Vanishing Roses, by James Ross Spencer II. Written in 2026. Read by James Ross Spencer. Part 1, The Wish in Winter. Chapter 1, The Blue Room. Master James had rung for Mr. Pritchard, the Blackthorn family butler, no fewer than 3 times, and by now his irritation had grown considerable. The tea had gone quite cold, the scones were plainly from the previous day and hot enough to crack a tooth, and, most unforgivably of all, Mr. Pritchard had brought the wrong preserves. Such negligence was entirely unacceptable. Simply because his father, the Earl of Blackthorn, was away in Inverness attending to business, and his mother had departed for London at the commencement of the opera season, did not mean the standards of Blackthorn Manor ought to descend into disorder. That evening felt particularly tense, for the most violent winter storm in nearly 3 years raged beyond the great Gothic windows of the southeast wing, their tall panes framed in midnight blue velvet curtains embroidered with twisting roses. Far below the cliff the distant sea churned beneath sudden flashes of lightning. Sebastian released a loud and thoroughly indignant caw. James sank miserably onto the great blue velvet sofa, exhausted in both body and spirit. Pulling the blanket more tightly around himself, he drew the 2 kerosene lamps near across the low table, where his mother's favorite crystal vase still held several of the rare blue roses that bloomed so mysteriously upon the Blackthorn estate. No other estate in the world produced roses so magnificent, or so mysterious, as the blue-black blooms known simply as the Blackthorn. Their petals possessed such a deep midnight hue that in certain light they appeared almost unreal. James had often heard it said that his great-grandmother, Lady Laura Blackthorn, had once worked alongside a celebrated horticulturist to cultivate the extraordinary flower that would forever bear the family name. Though beautiful, the roses were notoriously thorned, and whispers persisted for generations that they possessed unusual restorative properties. Some even claimed that a rare tonic distilled from their petals could heal itself, and heal illness, and in certain cases reverse disease altogether. Whether such stories were true, James could not say. Yet his parents, now nearing their 40th year, appeared scarcely older than 30. Indeed, all the Blackthorns possessed the same striking features: blue-black hair, blue-green eyes like the winter sea below Blackthorn Head, and pale alabaster skin, untouched by blemish or age. James had often contemplated this curious family secret. In all his 12 years he could scarcely remember even suffering so much as a common cold. 12 years old. The realization struck him suddenly. Today, February the 13th, was his birthday. Yet not a single servant had remembered. No cards had arrived from London, nor any presents from his parents, not even a letter. A sharp loneliness welled within him then, and tears slipped silently down his pale cheeks, glimmering like drops of silver in the flickering lamplight beside the window. Sebastian immediately flew to his shoulder with a soft rustle of black wings, uttering a low and sympathetic croak. The raven was, in truth, James' only real companion. He was never permitted to leave the estate, nor mingle with the village children beyond the gates. And so, after enduring the dreadful lessons of Mr. Crabtree each day, James passed most of his hours alone within Blackthorn Manor, reading adventure novels from the immense family library, solving crossword puzzles from the Kent newspapers, or devising elaborate cryptograms purely for his own amusement. Music, too, offered James a measure of comfort. On many afternoons he would retreat to the conservatory and lose himself at the Steinway grand piano, playing his beloved sonatas of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart or the delicate songs without words of Felix Mendelssohn. Hours could vanish entirely whenever he sat before the piano, for music remained one of the few true sanctuaries of his solitary life. Whenever his parents were absent and melancholia settled heavily upon him, James would inevitably turn to Frédéric Chopin's Valse, Opus 69, L'Adieu, pouring all the loneliness of his young heart into its mournful phrases while Sebastian listened nearby in solemn silence. His beloved music tutor, Maestro Saint-Clair, had once gifted him the Nocturnes Opus 33 by Gabriel Fauré. As the maestro performed the pieces upon a snowy winter evening, James had listened in quiet wonder before softly remarking, "How beautiful, sir, like a fragrant field of lavender in springtime." The maestro had smiled warmly. "Master James, you possess the soul of a true romantic. Continue with such devotion, and you shall one day become a remarkable keyboardist. Your sensitivity and insight are rare indeed for one so young." James admired his music teacher deeply. Anyone capable of creating such beauty from a world so often marked by sorrow seemed, in his view, profoundly admirable. Though James excelled at both piano and violin, and possessed a warm, boyish contralto voice, he frequently longed for adulthood. His father, John Cornelius Blackthorne, 6th Earl of Blackthorne, was among the most respected gentlemen in England and master of nearly 1,000 acres of breathtaking coastal land north of Dover. The Blackthorne holdings were famed for their orchards of apples, pears, and dark plums, as well as their fertile farms, grazing sheep, and fine cattle overlooking the sea. Lord Blackthorne was so dashingly handsome that both men and women were hypnotized by his Adonis features. Although Lord Blackthorne possessed a keen and disciplined business mind, he remained deeply compassionate towards his tenants and held a sincere reverence for the land itself. He despised fox hunting and all forms of killing for sport. Even the decapitated trophies displayed at the family's Inverness estate disturbed him greatly. Unlike many noblemen, Lord Blackthorne preferred simple salmon, fresh vegetables, fruit, and wholesome soups to the excessively heavy game dishes fashionable in aristocratic society. He would often amuse James with humorous remarks regarding certain pompous dinner guests who indulged themselves in endless six-course feasts, drenched in thick sauces, only to spend the remainder of the evening in loud discomfort and digestive misery. Lady Camille, with her elegant 28-inch waist and refined sensibilities, found such excesses equally revolting. Indeed, James himself had shown early signs of asthma and delicate lungs as a young child, until Miss Butterfield, the Manor's gifted chef, firmly insisted that Master James abstain from rich meats, heavy sauces, and excessive use of eggs. She possessed an almost uncanny instinct regarding matters of nourishment and health. She was the only other person next to Lord Blackthorne who knew the secret blue rose elixir. Only a half a cup of this magical formula cured Master James of his childhood asthma in less than 1 week. Under Butterfield's attentive care, James flourished upon generous plates of greens, nourishing soups, steamed yams, and restorative broths. In time, he became quietly intuitive regarding his own body, discovering that warming herbs, garlic, and ginger strengthened his breathing and greatly improved his health. Lady Camille Elizabeth Blackthorne, James' mother, came from distinguished French and English lineage. She was a striking woman with flaxen hair, violet eyes, and a complexion of remarkable purity. She was rumored to be a direct descendant of Anne Boleyn. Fashionable and effortlessly refined, she moved with ease through London society, where she spent much of her time attending opera houses, theaters, and intimate salons filled with music and conversation. Though often absent from Blackthorn Manor, she would return in luminous intervals bearing carefully chosen gifts, music scores, rare books, finely tailored clothing, and small tokens of affection which James treasured with quiet devotion. James adjusted his blanket once more and, with a growing sense of disbelief, realized that Mr. Pritchard had still not appeared. Ridiculous! He reached for the bell and rang it again, this time firmly with unmistakable resolve. At last the butler arrived. "You rang, Master James?" "Mr. Pritchard," James said sharply, "I have rung 3 times. This is quite unacceptable. The tea is cold, the scones are stale, and you have brought the wrong preserves." "My apologies, sir," replied the butler, "but it is rather late." "That is of no consequence," James interrupted. "I require a fresh pot of Darjeeling, properly hot, and apricot preserves, not black currant, and I expect the scones to be brought up fresh and piping hot." "The kitchen staff are not accustomed—" "Mr. Pritchard," James said, sitting upright, "I am master of this house in my parents' absence. Kindly see that my instructions are followed." The butler paused for a fraction of a moment, then inclined his head in a restrained bow. "Very good, Master James." When he had gone, James sank back into the sofa. His anger faded swiftly, replaced by something heavier and less easily named. The storm pressed hard against the manor, and the shadows upon the walls deepened, as though they might quietly conspire in his loneliness. His thoughts drifted unwillingly to that old curmudgeon, Mr. Crabtree, the cruel wooden ruler descending upon his hand, the sharp insistence that his left-handedness was something improper, almost sinister. James flexed his fingers unconsciously. He had protested once. He had paid for it dearly. James had always felt different, queer, too sensitive, too aware. He disliked cruelty in any form, and even the preparation of meat unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Yet at the same time, his perception was unusually acute. He noticed small lies in conversation, subtle shifts in tone and posture, the quiet dishonesty that sometimes passed between servants like an unspoken language. James had a highly developed psychic intuition. His imagination, too, was intensely vivid, filled with music, poetry, and sudden flashes of beauty that often exceeded what he could easily express in words. Sebastian suddenly took flight, rising to a high shelf of the black obsidian bookcase. With a sharp beat of his wings, he knocked a book to the floor. From between its pages slipped a strange card. The raven descended at once, seized it delicately in his beak, and brought it to James. James took it carefully and examined it in the lamplight. A silver-edged card, Roman numeral 13 upon it, a skeletal figure bearing a scythe. "More," James murmured, "French for death." A chill passed through him. Does this mean someone is going to die? Sebastian tilted his head but offered no answer. After a brief pause, he withdrew quietly into the shadow of the room. At that moment, Mr. Pritchard returned bearing a properly arranged tray, steam curling gently from the teapot in soft wavering ribbons. "Your tea and refreshments, sir." James brightened almost at once, the earlier tension easing from his expression. "Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. I was perhaps too cross earlier." The butler inclined his head in quiet acknowledgment. "No matter, sir. I trust this is more to your liking." James took a sip and smiled with genuine satisfaction. "Yes, delicious." The scones were warm, the apricot preserves exactly as he preferred them. "Please give Miss Butterfield my thanks," he added. After the butler had withdrawn, James felt a quiet return of comfort settle over him. Miss Butterfield always seemed to know precisely what he required, even when he could not quite articulate it himself. There was a steadiness to her kindness, a warmth that did not waver with the shifting moods of the household. In many ways, she was the closest thing he had to an ally within Blackthorn Manor. From behind the great medieval tapestry came a soft rustle. "Psst! Master James!" He turned at once. "Miss Butterfield!" She stepped forward with a warm, knowing smile, carefully carrying the most beautiful cake he had ever seen. It was adorned with 12 blue and silver candles, its icing delicately decorated with intricate rose petal patterns. For a moment, James could not speak. Tears gathered in his eyes. "You remembered!" "Of course I did, my little love," she said warmly, drawing him into an embrace. Behind her, Margaret and Emily stepped forward, carrying plates and a pitcher of fresh cream. James's expression brightened immediately. "Oh, please come in!" Miss Butterfield's expression softened slightly as she lowered her voice. "It is absolutely imperative," she said gently, "that you never mention the passageway behind the tapestry to your parents or to any of the other servants, especially Mr. Pritchard." James nodded at once, solemn with importance. He made a pinky swear without hesitation. There was something delicious about the secrecy of it all, an unspoken bond shared only between Miss Butterfield himself and Margaret and Emily. It felt like a small hidden world tucked safely within the walls of Blackthorn Manor. More importantly, it offered possibilities, a discreet passage down to the kitchens, away from formal corridors, watchful servants, and the constant scrutiny of household order. For the first time in that evening, James felt a spark of excitement beneath the warmth of the celebration. Miss Butterfield set the cake upon the low table beside the fire. In the shifting light, the frosting seemed almost luminous, its delicate rose decorations catching the glow of the flames. She took James' cold hand and warmed it gently between her own. "Now listen, Master James," she said softly. "February the 13th is not unlucky. It is magical. You were born for something remarkable. Make a wish, Levy." "I do not believe in wishes," he said softly. "Then believe in me, dear," she replied. He glanced at the candles, then slowly closed his eyes. He did not wish for wealth or power. Instead, he wished for a friend, someone who would understand him completely, a true companion bound to him in spirit and in life, a brother of the heart who would never leave him, a presence who would remain even when Miss Butterfield had long since grown old, and even after his parents had passed beyond the world of the living. He felt a sudden chill and instinctively made the sign of the cross against his chest. He drew a slow breath, then exhaled in a single steady motion, extinguishing all 12 candles at once. Margaret and Emily clapped softly, delighted. Miss Butterfield cut generous slices of cake and began serving them. A rich aroma of chocolate and fruit filled the room, warm and enveloping in the firelight. "Gâteau pour Hélène," James murmured, recognizing the French at once. "Dark chocolate with pears and hazelnut. Oh, how lovely!" They laughed together, shared tea, and spoke freely. Margaret sang softly while Emily danced in gentle, playful circles around the room. Miss Butterfield told warm, meandering stories that seemed to wrap the firelit space in comfort and ease. Before long, they were absorbed in parlor games, losing track of the time as the hours slipped quietly into the night and toward morning. For the first time, James felt the simple joy of belonging, no longer divided by rank, expectation, or distance. As the storm raged beyond the windows, the blue room glowed with warmth and life. And for the first time in a long while, Master James Blackthorn felt something stir within him. Not quite happiness, but something very close to hope. The next morning, James was discovered by Mr. Pritchard peacefully asleep beneath the thick ship wool blankets beside the roaring fire. All traces of the night's festivities had been quietly cleared away. There was no sign of the birthday cake nor the pitcher of cream. Sebastian rested silently in his cage. The tea tray remained upon the low table, half-eaten sandwiches and a few forgotten scones left as evidence of the gathering. Beyond the Gothic windows, the morning sun broke through the remnants of the storm, casting the room in a soft rose-gold glow, as though the manor itself had exhaled into a new and gentler day. Even Mr. Pritchard allowed himself the faintest smile as he drew the blanket more securely around Master James and placed a few extra logs upon the fire. Then with quiet care he withdrew, leaving the boy to his dreams.